Hey y'all, and welcome back to Joey's Booked. Today we're going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of April. This is a 3-star. Tabitha's probably phonetically correcting me right now on every book name I say today. So I'm actually going to be filming this wrap-up a little bit early because of some filming schedule and having time to edit and everything. I think in my most recent vlog I've talked, April's been kind of a busy month for me. I've had a lot going on. So in order to both help me and help Tabitha, our amazing editor, just to help us meet goals and timelines and everything like that, I am going to film a little bit early, even though April isn't technically done yet. But it's because I know what I'm currently reading, and I know it's going to take me the rest of the month at this rate. I did overall technically read 9 books in April, but there's one that I'm not counting towards my reading goals. And that does include what I'm currently reading, because it will be done this month. If I somehow finish it faster than I expect to, I'll just tackle on the next book and kind of do like a backlist thing. So there won't be as clear of stats this month on that book count, but I can say that most of my reading has been for vlogs. In April, I really started to read a little bit chunkier books, like not like, big tomes or like 800-page fantasies or anything like that. But I did read quite a few books that were between like the 4 to 500 range. I really wanted to focus on quality over quantity this month because the last 3 months I've read a full 11 books, which really isn't that big of a difference. And I know that even like the 8 or 9 that I read this month is still a lot, but I was starting to get really slumpy, and I've still kind of felt that way to a degree. And I just really wanted to pick up books that I wanted to read and still be able to meet most of my goals in the process. Things that we did meet goal-wise is actively I am reading my Stephen King for the month, which this month is going to be 4 Past Midnight. I will talk more about that in a minute. And then I also did my Buzzword Readathon book, which was not the one that I planned on doing, and I will talk more about why when I actually review it. But for both the cover challenge and the title challenge involving animals, I was able to read The Serpent in the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. And I'll talk more when I get there, but this is the most unexpected book I ever planned to read at all, but I read it for a specific reason outside of that challenge. I also, this month, filmed 2 vlogs, one that should hopefully already be up, and one that will probably actually be coming out after this video, but I wanted to read a book where I read translated works, where I read Walking Practice by Dokumen. I read my most anticipated book of the year, Vanishing World by Sayaka Murata, and I read Lemon by Kwon Yosun. Also, I did decide to get me out of my slumpiness, do a bit of a mood reading vlog. So, for that mood reading vlog, I will have read At Dark I Become Loathsome by Eric LaRocca, which is such a choice for a mood reading. Also a choice, Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix, and As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zulfa Cho. I'm never gonna get that inflection right. Never gonna do it. And I listen to that one, still not gonna get it right. Those were all for videos, or for one of my goals. I don't think there's hardly anything that I've read that isn't for something like that. But I was very particular in what I picked up, and the ratings are showing this month. And this has been, rating-wise and quality-wise, my best reading month to date. So, with all of that said, let's go ahead and get into these books. because of how this reading month went, I didn't have a huge range of variety in my ratings. So they're not going to be grouped probably as well as usual, but we're still going to go with it. Currently, as I mentioned, I am reading Four Past Midnight by Stephen King. I've only got a couple days left in the month, and I do aim to read this and finish it hopefully by the end of April. And if for some reason I have to carry it over a day or two into May, it's still going to count as an April read. This is a chunky collection of stories from Stephen King. There are fuller, smaller novellas within this, and it includes, I know the first one is The Langoliers, which I have actually read before even picking this collection up. Secret Window, Secret Garden, The Library Policeman, and The Sun Dog. Four Past Midnight. So that's going to be another collection for my Stephen King read through. This will be the first book that I talk about in my next Stephen King vlog. And that's really all I'm going to say on it. I will give a little bit of a sneak peek and say, in the past, when I read The Langoliers, I did pretty well enjoy that story, even though it's a really weird one. And I've seen the film adaptation too. We'll go back over my full thoughts on this in a vlog that will be out before too long. Now, I did technically read another book this month, and I want to talk about it. After I read a different book, it just really, really made me think of this, and it's something I periodically go back and reread anyways. It's one of the only things that I can really say I've reread. And there's not a rating. When the first time I read it, I gave it 5 stars. That's going to be kind of a poem, which is Sea Prayer by Khalid Hosseini. If for some reason the vlog where I mood read is out, I do talk about this a little bit, but this is a very short poem that I think is super underrated by Khalid Hosseini that basically follows a man telling a story to his son about escaping the war in Syria and just what kind of just highlighting bits and pieces simplistically of things. It's told very much in verse and is illustrated, but like some of these illustrations are absolutely gorgeous. And that doesn't mean that they're happy. So like, but you know, you can see here there's verse, there's this gorgeous illustration by Dan Williams, and it's not necessarily happy, but like even in the back it talks about who this is dedicated to, so it's not really a spoiler, but it says Sea Prayer was inspired by the story of Alan Kurdi, the 3-year-old Syrian refugee who drowned in the Mediterranean Sea trying to reach safety in Europe in 2015. In the year after Alan's death, 4,176 others died or went missing attempting that same journey. And with this month having been Arab American Heritage Month, I really wanted to read from Arab authors in general, and I didn't really get to near as many as I would have liked to. I didn't end up doing like a full vlog or anything for it, even though really probably should have. This is just such an important story, and I really went the route of things happening in Syria and the Syrian war and stuff when I was choosing literature and stuff to read about, and I'm just really happy to have read this again. I highly recommend it. It's a great little poem, quick short read. You could probably find it at a library if you don't want to pay the money for it, but it's gorgeous. There's also a video reading of this on YouTube that is actually from the author that is free, and it is a 360 video where you can turn and watch the artwork kind of come to life a little bit as you read the story. So for my lower end ratings, we are going to start with the 1 2-star that I gave this month, which would be Lemon. And Lemon is kind of this translated story. It's translated from Korean, and it's kind of like this mystery type investigation about this girl who has like died, and we're following from the viewpoints of different students who are either suspects or were involved or had some kind of relationship to this girl, and trying to figure out exactly what happened. And I didn't really care for it. I talk about it a lot in that vlog, so I'm going to move kind of quick with these ones on this wrap up. But just the writing in it didn't work. I didn't really like the perspectives. It got really weird in like how it would kind of shift in each perspective that you got in the way that it was told. There was some experimental stuff in it, like low level experimental stuff in it with some verse or like diary entries or something like that. I just I didn't like the way the story was told. I didn't really like how it ended. I didn't really feel like I got anything out of it. And really, that's all I can really add outside of what I've said in that blog because I read it earlier in the month. It's that I end up a 2-star, and I can't say, even for something this short, that I would really recommend this one out. And then in my 3 stars, the only 3-star book I had this month, and there was no 1-stars I want to point out. For 3 stars, we had As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow. And I'm kind of upset that this one hit as low, but I'm also not surprised. And I talk about this in the vlog, but basically, I looked past the fact that this is YA, and I don't normally read YA. I looked past the fact that this was a romance heavy plot, even though it was a YA kind of romance and not like a big smutty one, so whatever with that. I also point out that this is a very important book that I would highly recommend to anyone, especially people in the age range this is directed for, because of the representation. This is what really made me want to pick Sea Prayer back up, because we are following Salima and her sister Lila, and they are living in Syria during the war and looking at the idea of escape. And Salima is 19 years old, and she has only completed 1 year pharmacy school, and she is trying to, well, she's not trying to, because that she has any kind of medical knowledge at all, that has basically made her a trauma ER doctor and surgeon, even though she does not have hardly any training at all. And she is just helping people who have been injured during the war. Her and Layla's home has been like bombed in the past. They have lost family. Layla is pregnant, so that's really like a diving factor in Salima wanting to escape. But then there's also this romantic interest that comes along, and that's where it lost me a little bit, is because it was really insta-lovey. I could move past, okay, it's YA, they're gonna be young adults in this really adult situation, so there might be a little bit of that, but it was like they met and they were like obsessed. And then my biggest issue was just the personification of feelings or as characters is something that doesn't always work for me. This focus is really heavy on trauma and PTSD and even depression and anxiety and so many things. But when it's put in as a separate character that are actually talking and speaking, that's just something that doesn't work for me in general. So I'm giving it a 3 stars for me, but I understand why it has such high ratings. I understand why it is such an important book. It is another book by a Middle Eastern or presumably Arab author, and this one is by a female author, which just is such an underrepresented community that I really think you should check it out. And now we're just gonna call it 4 stars and higher, because everything else I read in April has been 4 or higher, which, if you followed me in my reading year so far, that's ridiculous, because I have not had the best reading year until now. So, I did have one book that was just a straight 4 star, which sounds even crazier when I say that out loud. And I cannot believe that I even read this book, let alone gave it 4 stars. But that would be The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. And I feel like it's only important to note that apparently, slowly, I think I may be going slightly into my smut era. Not really. No. I read this for a trivia night that I was invited to. Tabitha has actually read this too, since she'll be watching this. So, fun fact, we both read this for a trivia night that we were invited to by some of her friends. And the trivia night itself, I've made a short about it if you haven't seen it yet. That was a ton of fun, and I will be looking forward to going back with some friends that we did not do well. And unfortunately, you might be getting some more content from me that is a little outside of my comfort zone because it looks like this book trivia club is all romantasy so far. But I will say, I gave romantasy 4 stars, and I don't know who I am. I read this and I had an identity crisis because I read horror and scary, and I don't like romance. And I'm going to throw out right now, there was a full chapter of smut in this, and I was listening while reading, and I just put the book down and I phased out for an entire chapter. It I couldn't with the language. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I didn't like that. And honestly, if the romance wasn't as big of a part in this, it might have even had a bit of a higher rating because I loved the world building so much. In this, we are following Araya, who is a human who was adopted by vampires. And in this world, there are all these fractions of vampires, and she's been raised, and she is taking place in the Kajari, which is kind of this Hunger Games esque tournament that's like fight to the death, and all these vampires from these different like fractions or villages, or not villages, but like civilizations, whatever the word I'm looking for right now that I'm not thinking of. Basically, all of them can complete in it, and then whoever wins is granted a wish by their goddess Nyaxia. And there is just the world of these vampires worked so well for me. I really liked exploring all the different types of vampires and their political affiliations with each other. And then there was the romance, which I didn't fully hate because it had very star-crossed lovers kind of thing going on. Araya is not the most likable character, and she starts with so much potential, and then she just kind of gets whiny, which I wasn't a fan of. So if I am to continue, which I'm honestly thinking about, because this is part of a duology, but then there's going to be 3 sets of duologies, and then there's some like in between books. It's going to be a whole commitment. But there's also a completionist in me that's like, you should at least finish the other book, because I don't like leaving that not fully done. Anyways, if I do read it, I'm scared I'm not gonna like the second one as much. But this was fully a rating of I enjoyed the vibes, I enjoyed the world building, and just this whole vampire thing going on. So even if you're not into romantasy, but you do like some of the darker, gritty fantasy as far and almost even a little campy, this could still maybe work for you. So let's see. I may be entering a romantasy smut era, and it's not even necessarily gonna be fully out of my own volition. It's gonna be the book club's fault. That means I still have 4 books to talk about that are 4.5 stars or higher, and I am so excited about it. So, where do we even start here? First 4.5 star would probably be Walking Practice by Dolkeman. So, out of my 4.5 stars, I don't know. I don't know where this actually falls. In Walking Practice, we are following this alien as they have crash landed on Earth, and they are a shapeshifter, and they both feed on humans to survive, but they are also like observing humans, and we're getting their observation. Also, how they are being affected by being on Earth. And that name Walking Practice comes from the fact of gravity and how difficult it is for our shapeshifter to walk because they are not used to Earth's gravity. But really, the love for this one comes out of some of the humor because this alien is just funny. It made me laugh out loud so many times, but it also is exploring hookup culture a little bit, and it talks about gender and identity and how we view people, and it really dives into this in such a just a unique way from looking at it from the outside. but then it also really touches on, like, even as people, like, how we want connection, because our friend here is also trying to find connection in their own way because they're alone. And then that really ties into the hookup culture of, are not me, but like people, like hooking up in search of love? Are they doing it in search of just pleasure? Or like, where is this coming from? And this is also translated from Korean, but like, it was just such a delightful little novella. It did get a little repetitive for me at times, and it kind of lost me at some points. But there's also these fun little illustrations that I still don't have full answers on what exactly is going on with. It's wacky, it's weird, but it is a really good time, and I would highly recommend it if you like weird. Then another 4.5 stars is going to be Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix, which is now my new favorite Grady Hendrix. And I have always been so skeptical with Grady because I've had such mixed feelings. And this was originally meant to be a third time try book, but I went ahead and picked it up for this vlog because I had a library hold that I needed to use because I accidentally borrowed it instead of delaying it. And this is another chunker. But I actually really, really enjoyed this. And when I say that I really focused on my quality over quantity, what really happened is between this and this, which is like 400 to 500 pages each. These both took me about a week each on their own to read between everything I had going on. So really, all of these other books I read in like a week and a half, maybe. But back to Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. This is really taking a historical stance on teenage pregnancy and wrapping it up with a dark, witchy kind of story as well. And for a story about teenage pregnancy written by a man, this was done so well. And I know I can't like fully rate that or speak on that myself, as I am also a man, but like, I think if you haven't seen reviews on this on BookTube at this point, I don't know where you've been. I feel like I'm late to the game in reading it. And I've seen a lot of female readers say that it handles it well, so I'm going to trust their judgment when I say that myself. We are following Fern slash Neva. Neva is her real name, Fern is the name she is given, when she is sent to a maternity home around 1970. And because she has gotten pregnant as a teenager and she has been shipped away, and then we are following her along with all of these other girls that are also in the home. But then they encounter a witch who gives them this very skeptical seeming book of witchcraft. And we're really following these girls on their journeys as they're pregnant in this home, but also trying to find their own autonomy and realize when they're not being told what it means to be pregnant and what is happening to their bodies, they are trying to really kind of start to take control of their own lives and figure some of these things out. And they turn to witchcraft in the process, and it goes from there. I don't think this was like the most exciting story, and there were times where I kind of felt a little ruddy with it, but I really enjoyed it overall, and I just really enjoyed how well done it was for how it was created. And I loved that we were still talking about something that is so relative today. And I just think it's important to talk about. I think it was well done. I do wish some of the pacing and stuff was around. I think some of the body horror in this was great. And I liked that it wasn't so campy silly coming from Grady Hendrix, and it was a lot darker and just serious in the tone the whole time. Not that I never laughed, not that there was never anything good, but just as a whole, this is closer to what I've wanted from Grady, and this gives me hope that there might be a 5 star from him in the future for me. And then our final 4.5 star would be At Dark I Become Loathsome by Eric LaRocca, which out of these three is questionably my favorite and was pretty dang near just being a 5 star. And I think this may be my most controversial rating of the month because I have not seen great reviews for this. But I loved it. but I am such a Eric LaRocca's fan that it's very rare that I read something he's written and I don't like it, which I think was like maybe one or two books. This is pretty close to a full length novel for Eric LaRocca, and I was really a little apprehensive because his other full length book, even though they're still pretty short, I didn't care for as much. This, however, it is one, a book that I cannot wait to have front facing on my favorite shelf, but two, it is dark. It is heavy. It is, what was the old phrase people used to say? It's a big sad. This is so depressing, and I loved every moment of it. That's a lie. Actually, the reason it has 4.5 stars is mixed throughout this. There are like other stories that are almost kind of short story, Eric LaRocca type things that are being told, and there was one that kind of took me out of it. Also, they repeat the title phrase so many times, but really, we're following Ashley, who he is very clearly depressed and has a lot of other things going on, and we find out why he is in this position he's in, but he deals a lot with it through body modification and self-loathing, and he does these rituals as a service for people that basically are done in a way to try to help people who are having really bad thoughts and not wanting to continue on. And it's like almost like for him, that's what keeps him going is by helping other people. But the way that he does it is very peculiar and weird and dark. And throughout, as he is dealing with these things, it continues to take on from there. It hits so hard, but the way that LaRocca talks about grief and depression and all of these things, it as someone who has struggled with some of these feelings in life and not always had a very good outlook on themselves and just dealt with depression and all of those things. There's something about this that just really, really hit me and made me feel seen and will not be for the majority of the population, but it worked. I will say the overall plot is pretty simple. I thought it was fairly predictable, but it still worked for me and it did what it set out to do. It's just maybe skip over that title if you read it because it happens so much. We have finally reached another 5-star book, and that would be Vanishing World by Sayaka Murata. I knew I was going to love this book, but I had no clue just how much. I never thought I'd get another 5-star from Sayaka at the rate that I was starting to have after reading Earthlings. Like everything else just couldn't compare. And this isn't as good, but it's currently probably one of my favorite books of the year. So in this, we are following Amane, and she is in like this kind of near futurish dystopian world where humans just don't have sex anymore. Like it's not a thing. There's marriage, but like that's not how you reproduce. Everything is done artificially, and it's really just changed the culture of the world. And it kind of follows Amani throughout her life as like she is navigating that she does have sexual desire and she's figuring out what that means. And she finds out like she was born naturally, which doesn't really happen anymore. And as the story progresses, we also see more of how the world is evolving and how it is dealing with this phenomenon where people just, even if they're having sex for pleasure, it's not romantic. Like, the way that people are talking about, like, you actually had sex with your husband, that's like having sex with your sibling or something like that. Like, it's shunned upon. But basically, like, it's exploring all of this. It's exploring, like, sexual desire versus love and lust and all of these different things. But it's doing it in this wacky way, and there's just so much that's covered in this in such a short amount of time. It's weird. It's very Murata. It's not gonna be for everyone. I absolutely loved this book and I want to rave, but my camera battery is dying and I'm trying to get this wrapped up. Thank you so much for watching and sticking along, even if I had to rush a little at the end. And thank you for just continuing to support the channel. If you've made it this far and you haven't, leave a like and subscribe down below if you don't mind, or if you want to see more content. If you made it this far, do I continue this series? Do I explore more romantasy? Because, like, who am I? This is not who I am. But I gave it 4 stars, and we're still stuck on it. And that was the first book I read this month. Otherwise, let me know your favorite book of the month. But seriously, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to keep reading because I still got to finish the Stephen King book and hopefully give you some updates on that here soon in a video. I will see you in another video here very soon. Bye.